In June 2016, faculty and staff members, along with students from Shenandoah University, traveled together to Poland to complete a global experiential learning course to learn how Poland is moving toward inclusive educational practices. In 1989, the Solidarity movement helped defeat the rule of communism in Poland. Now the Republic of Poland is reforming its economic, political, and the social foundations. In 2006, the United Nations adopted the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, and Poland ratified that convention in 2012. This means that Poland has agreed to the terms of the treaty and is working toward implementing inclusive practices within all aspects of Polish society. In terms of educational system reform, these questions Poland are now addressing are: how do we include children with disabilities in public and private school settings? How do we prepare all children to be productive, contributing members of society? In the school year 2010-2011, approximately 5 million students received compulsory education in Poland. Of those students, a little more than 150,000 students received special education services in public schools, and close to 6,000 received special education services in private schools. This means that only 3% of the students in both public and private schools receive special education services, compared to about 15% of school-age children in the United States. So how is Poland addressing the educational initiatives of the CRPD? Because the Polish people ratified the CRPD in 2012, there's now a national shift in educational policies, calling for more inclusion of children with disabilities in both public and private school settings. However, educational statistics indicate that the vast majority of students with disabilities are still being educated in non-inclusive settings and within special education institutions. This picture is an exception. It is a public charter school in Wrocław. Students with and without disabilities are educated together in the classrooms. In Poland, as well as throughout the European Union, there is a shift from a charity model toward working with persons with disabilities in educational and vocational training centers. The emphasis is to help them become contributing members of society. At the Celestin Rehabilitation Center, a neurologist and her sister, who has a son with cognitive and physical disabilities, have created a school that remains private but does service persons with disabilities and their families who travel there from all over Poland. In order to understand how the shift is occurring from a charity model to a more inclusive model, you have to first understand the difference between integration and inclusion. Integration refers to students with disabilities studying in mainstream environments, but they may not be educated together with students without disabilities. Inclusion refers to students accessing the general curriculum, but that curriculum is adapted to respond to student needs, and students with disabilities are educated in the same setting as students without disabilities. These images are from the Celestin Rehabilitation Center. It has a day school for children in the village, and students with disabilities that come to the Center for Educational Health and Vocational Training are educated with children without disabilities. Moving toward inclusive educational practices means that students with disabilities learn with their non-disabled peers, and that the curriculum and the ways of teaching are adapted so that the students with diverse needs can be successful learners. This picture shows When the gel participants visited the Celestine Rehabilitation Center, Debbie Schwen, an occupational therapist from Virginia, explained to the rehabilitation staff how to adapt art tools so they can be used to help students with fine motor difficulties participate in inclusive educational settings, such as an art classroom. In the picture on the left at the Celestine Center, we can see students learning how to create pottery as part of their vocational training. In the top right, we see a student from the Amigo School learning how to create floral designs. And at the same school in the bottom right, we see students who are deaf and students who are not deaf being educated in the same math classroom. When we visited the Amigo schools, Jill Poland students from Shenandoah University discussed with the Amigo secondary students how the United States has moved from integrated school environments to full inclusive school settings. They also shared their experiences with students with disabilities in their United States schools and how they were learning the general curriculum along with their non-disabled peers in the inclusive classrooms. According to researchers from an American Association on Intellectual and Developmental Disabilities who are studying Polish educational practices, they have found that the following concerns still exist in Poland. In Poland, inclusive education is seen as contingent. That is, that students with disabilities can be educated in mainstream schools only if certain conditions are met. They also found that special education is viewed as services given to persons with disabilities who cannot attend public schools. And in many cases, students with moderate and severe intellectual disabilities and those with profound multiple disabilities, such as mental illness and aggressive behavior, are still being served in segregated settings. Most educators in Poland share the opinion that the possibility of integration can be determined by personal factors such as physical, emotional development, psychological resilience, cognitive abilities, and motivation. What can we do to address a more inclusive society? Well, one way was to share our ideas, such as those that we shared on our GEL Poland trip in June of 2016. Another way is to contact our congressmen, our senators, and ask them to reconsider the United States ratification of the CRPD.